This is Jordan Peterson on the left, Dr. Phil, quote unquote, on the right. These two guys are both, I think they have degrees in psychology, but they go with deeply unscientific ideas over their scientific knowledge more often than not, seemingly. They both, complain about wokeism and DEI and all the other garbage. Dr. Phil spread the idea that people are putting razor blades in Halloween candy. They are not. I mean, it's just so stupid, dude. Some of this stuff is so stupid. Anyway, I want to give this a listen because, one of these guys alone can spout off so much stupid nonsense. It's ridiculous. But put them together, like, I don't even know what's going to happen. Like a sun is going to implode on itself or something. So anyway, let's listen to what these two guys have to say together. Bound to be interesting. And while we do, we're going to play some Breath of the Wild 2, Tears of the Kingdom. Just kind of going around doing whatever. Shouldn't bother you too much if you've never played it before. So,
hello, everyone.
Hello.
I have the opportunity today to talk to Dr. Phil McGraw, who's probably perhaps the world's most well-known practicing clinical psychologist.
Yeah, okay.
Certainly on the...
He's not a practicing clinical psychologist, though. He lost his medical license, didn't he? Or he just gave it up or something? Like he doesn't need it anymore? He's not a practicing psychologist. Love how he twists it around, like right from the jump. He gives him more credit than he deserves.
On the media side of things, and he's been doing that with extreme success for decades, and that's quite something to pull off. And he's come leaping forward once again, not only with a new network that's going to launch on cable and elsewhere on April 2nd, but also with a new book called We've Got Issues, which is definitely the case, both psychologically and socially in the West. And so that's what we're going to walk through. He offers a diagnosis. He sees that three fundamental pillars of Western society and psychology.
He's not a practicing psychologist. I just want to make that clear. He started a TV show and got famous. Look, there's this problem with society that I've noticed. And look, I just want to draw the problem to your attention, okay? Think about this. Just because somebody is famous or well-known or reputable does not mean they know what they are talking about, okay? It's hard to... When there's somebody that you really like to listen to or watch, me included, I'm not, exempt from this equation. When there's someone you enjoy listening to a lot, you put more weight in what they say. When that value in what they say may not be warranted, they may not deserve it. They may be completely full of shit. They may have no idea what they're talking about. Or maybe they do know what they're talking about, and they spout off nonsense anyway. Maybe they have a degree in psychology, like Jordan Peterson or Phil McGraw, for example, and they just make shit up right off the top of their head. Just because somebody is famous does not mean they know what they are talking about. Really. So say that again, Jordan.
He sees that three fundamental pillars of Western society.
Wait.
And so that's what we're going to walk through. He offers a diagnosis. He sees that three fundamental pillars of Western society and psychological stability are under assault: ideological assault, practical assault, simultaneously.
Practical assault? What is practical assault? Most people would have said literal assault or something. Why did he say practical? That doesn't make any sense. What does practical assault even mean? Here's one of the big issues with Jordan Peterson that you'll come to find. If this is your first time listening to the dude long term, he uses word salad constantly to sound smarter. And when you kind of piece all the words together and think about it, you're like, oh, I know what he's trying to say now, when that may not even be what he was trying to say. He may have a PhD, Phil McGraw, I'm not sure. But I'm not going to call him Dr. Phil. I'm going to call him Phil or Phil McGraw because I'm just unclear on his credentials.
Pillars of faith, family, and free speech. So that's a bit of a diagnostic enterprise. And then he offers 10 working principles to deal with those assaults. And some of those are valid psychologically and some of them valid socially.
What does that mean? Valid psychologically and valid socially? What's he talking about?
They all circulate around a central ethos, you might say. So
what does that mean? Oh my God, dude. Just use English. Look, there's this thing called the Jordan Peterson word salad generator. Let me just show you, okay? So this is completely random words stuck together to sound like Jordan Peterson. Let's see. The 12 rules for life illuminates potential observations. What? That's not a real thing that Jordan Peterson said, but it sounds like something that he would say. More wisdom. Your body differentiates into irrational external reality. That means nothing. It means nothing, okay? What we're listening to here with Jordan Peterson is nonsense. I mean, I suppose you could kind of piece it together into something meaningful, maybe? But you can do that with the word salad generator, too. Your body differentiates into irrational external reality. So I guess if I really wanted to piece this together, reality that we're in is kind of irrational sometimes, right? He says external reality because he's not talking about the one in our heads. He's talking about like actual reality. And our body differentiates into reality. I'm not sure what that means. I could probably pull something up, right? The dominance hierarchy is nested in infinite power. See, this is another just complete random word salad garbage. Means nothing. It's a computer-generated word salad thing to be nothing, but to sound like Jordan Peterson. I suppose I can make some sense out of that. Dominance hierarchy. So I guess he's saying like the hierarchy that like the elites and their position is nested in infinite powers. He's saying like they're satanic, or you could say the elites of the world have always been the elites of the world instead. You could interpret it that way. Like you can interpret it any way you want. And by doing so, you sit there and you try to mull through what the dude's communicating, even though it's complete nonsense. And when you stick on a meaning, since it could mean anything, it'll be a meaning that connects with you, that you feel is relevant and important. QAnoners will read that and say, yeah, elites are run by Satan. And everybody else who's not a conspiracy theorist nutcase will say, yeah, you know, elites have always kind of run the world in their own way, in their own image or whatever. That's what Jordan Peterson does. So he uses big words that are nonsense. I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that going in. He's just talking nonsense. He's not special. He's not more intelligent. He just picks random words and throws them out there and hopes that they mean something to somebody. And apparently they do.
Valid socially. They all circulate around a central ethos, you might say. So we
Again, you just like, why? Why?
discuss all 10 principles. We discuss the ethos around which they circulate. We discover that we discuss the necessity of principled conception and action for such.
What does that mean? The necessity of principled what?
We discuss the necessity of principled conception and act.
Principled conception? The necessity of principled conception and action. I mean, I suppose I can kind of piece something together that could possibly mean. But why isn't he just, like, communicating his ideas in English? You know why? Because I don't think he really has any ideas. I think he's just speaking nonsense 99% of the time.
Action for psychological stability and social unity, and that constitutes the discussion. So
that constitutes a discussion. I love that he communicated literally nothing to us, and he's like, that constitutes a discussion, so discuss. Discuss what? Oh my God, dude. Phil's certainly sitting there thinking to himself, discuss what? Also, right? There's no way in hell Phil made any sense of what was just said.
You're welcome to watch and listen. Thanks very much. All right. Well, hello, Dr. Phil.
Oh, okay. I guess he was talking to us, not to Phil. Fascinating. You're welcome to watch and listen. Learn something is the implication here. Just painfully stupid.
Well, hello, Dr. Phil. It's very good to meet you, and thank you for agreeing to talk to me today. It seems like you're everywhere at the moment, and I want to talk about how you managed that, but I suspect it has
Well, he's not really everywhere. He's all over right-wing media at the moment.
something to do, at least with the topic of your new book, which is We've Got Issues. Yeah, well, that certainly seems to be the case. And you start the book by outlining, in your estimation, well, by making the case that there is something that's under attack or a set of things that are under attack, and you concentrate on free speech, faith, and family. And so
oh my God. Free speech is not under attack. Faith is not under attack. And I don't even know what he means by family being under attack. What the hell does that mean? Does that mean you're anti-LGBT? I don't know.
I guess the first obvious question is, why do you believe that we're under attack, so to speak? Why that metaphor? Under attack by what? And why did you pick those three principles?
All questions that I have, absolutely.
As the central focus of your alert and your defense?
Great question, and it's so good to sit down and talk to you. So thank you for having me as a guest. I'm honored to be here. Listen, I've been doing this for a long time.
Doing what? What have you been doing for a long time? Media? You've been doing the whole media bit? Yeah, I suppose so. He's been on media for a long time. He had a TV show for a while, if you don't know him, where he gave kids the quote-unquote tough treatment and tried to scare the shit out of them, tried to put the fear of God in them, if you will. That's, scare tactics are proven psychologically not to work, FYI. I learned that literally in my first year, Psychology 101 class. And apparently this dude forgot all about it. Like, I wonder where all the people are now that he scared the bejesus out of. One has to wonder.
Have you, and I've been dealing with the public.
By the way, if you don't know what he did, sorry, let's step back here. If you don't know Dr. Phil, he famously had this TV show where he took kids who were kind of troubled, like troubled teens or whatever, getting into drugs or getting into some kind of crime, and he would get like a boot camp instructor, like, a drill sergeant in to make them, to humiliate them, basically. He would humiliate these kids publicly on TV, and then he would send them away to be humiliated long-term, 6-week course or whatever by this drill sergeant. That's Dr. Phil. That's what he did. That's not what a real psychologist would do. That wouldn't be advised by any real psychologist. But, that's Dr. Phil. So anyway, now you know what he did.
Doing this for a long time, as have you, and I've been dealing with the public.
Doing what? As have you? Doing what? Talking to the public?
Public for a long time and listening to their questions. We get tens of thousands of emails, writing in, and I've noticed that they've really changed across time. Because when
no fucking way, really. Emails have changed across time. Knock me over with a feather. You mean to tell me that people are different today than they were 60 years ago? Wow. This guy is revealing new information to me. I had no clue. People are different. Wow. Go on. Words of wisdom from this guy, right? Jeez. Stuff I couldn't learn anywhere else. Thank you, Phil.
When you think about it, when I started out, my career in psychology, it was way back in the 70s. So I've been through the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, all the way up till now. When I started out on television was 2002, and the first text message hadn't even been sent at that point. So things have
yes, you're old. We all know that.
Have really changed, and the rate of change has really accelerated across time. And a lot of this technology
change is bad, of course. We don't want change, right?
Is good. I mean, there are great benefits from it, of course, but there are a lot of unintended side effects as well. And when I look at what's going on in this country, I think that the backbone of any society is the family. I think that's the strength of any society. And
okay.
When I say it's under attack, I think it's under attack in part unintentionally by technology, and in part because there are people that are pushing narratives in current society that have nothing to do with reality, have nothing to do with...
Great, okay. So you think people are pushing narratives. Do you have any evidence of that? Or are you just pulling that right out of your ass?
science, have
Yeah, spoiler alert, he's pulling it right out of his ass.
society, that have nothing to do with reality, have nothing to do with science, have nothing to do with fact, nothing to do with history.
You know, the thing is with psychologists, it is a real science, a full-fledged science, and it's very complex. I really liked my sociology class a lot. Like, I think more than my psychology class, but psychology more focuses on like the structure of the brain and why the brain does what it does and things like that. It's really, really fascinating. Now, what Phil is doing here, he's a scientist. As a psychologist, he is a scientist. Except a scientist wouldn't say things like this. He wouldn't word things this way.
In current society that have nothing to do with reality, have nothing.
There are narratives in current society that have nothing to do with reality. He's about to say, of course, that like trans people are trying to groom your kids. That's the kind of thing that he's about to bust out. That this is not how a scientist talks about a subject. This isn't how a scientist views a subject.
Nothing to do with science, have nothing to do with fact, nothing to do with history. They're just running an agenda that's very self-referential.
Who is they exactly? Are they in the room with us right now, Phil? What does he mean when he says they? Of course, he means the elites or some ambiguous group out there that's trying to take control of everything. This is insane. Bubbles says, I texted before 2002. Fair enough. Texting happened before 2002. My dad had one of those big H phones that he hooked to his belt, you know? One of the early cell phones. And my grandmother had a car phone. I don't know if you guys remember the old car phone. It was effectively a cell phone that plugged into your car. And she had that car phone up until the moment that they would not let her have that thing anymore. Until the company stopped running that service. Like, they stopped allowing people to purchase the service. I don't know. 30, 40 years ago, but people who were still on the service, they kept some servers running just for them. And she was one of those people that they kept the servers running for all that time. It was pretty funny. She kept it all the way until, God, when did she stop using her car phone? 2018, maybe? Anyway, sorry. Yeah, Phil, we get the idea. You're old. Okay, thank you for that clarification. You're old and out of touch with reality and society. Thank you.
And it is not in our best interest at all to sit silently by and allow these people to hijack what's going on,
What people?
narrative of this country. And I'll tell you further that I believe that if we don't speak up, I call it the tyranny of the fringe. I think if we don't speak up, they're going to hijack and start taking over. They're going to take over language. They're going to.
Again, who is they? The implicit implication in this whole thing is that they constitutes wokeists or I don't know, what would you call it? Wokeists or trans people generally or whatever. That's who, quote unquote, they is. Absolutely insane. What did he say it was? Check that out. There's a blood moon coming. What did he say? The tyranny of the fringe or something? Insane. Get help.
Take over priorities and how those priorities are pursued. And I hear him talking about things that I think could absolutely undermine society, like this equality of outcome concept.
Okay, I'm going to have to talk about this, aren't I? If you guys don't know what equality of outcome versus equality of opportunity is, they're basically talking about equity versus equality, right? So right now in society, let me try to think about how to phrase this. Imagine a society where everything is 100% equal. Everybody is 100% completely and totally equal to everybody else. Equal chances to get in, equal everything. But the black community has still spent the previous, well, since the early days of America, all the way up to the 1860s, 1865. They spent all that time as slaves. And from 1865 to 1965, I think, there were Jim Crow laws. There were segregation laws, laws to prevent black people from rising up and getting better and making something of themselves. There were laws to prevent that. All of the top positions were occupied. All of the money was being earned by white people in America because of segregation laws and Jim Crow laws and everything else. In 1965, things were officially, legally opened up so that now black people can go to the same school as white people, drink from the same water fountain as white people. You think that they're going to hire them to work with white people if they can't drink from the same water fountain? No. So 1965, there are people alive right now, today, whose grandma was a slave. Your grandma probably wasn't a slave, right? Well, theirs was. Their grandma was a slave. Imagine that for a second. Their grandparent was born into slavery, whipped half to death, many of them all the way to death. You know, the white people in America, the Anglo-Saxons, the WASPs, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, they've been going around the monopoly board since the 1600s, and they've been collecting 200 when they pass go by collecting it from their slaves. I forget what the percentage is. Let me see. It's hard to know exactly how many slaves there were or how many people owned slaves. It's hard to know for sure, but roughly 25% of the colonial population owned slaves. So that was the 1700s. Roughly 25% is what I'm getting here. But it's hard to, I think it was something like 40% of everybody in the South owned slaves. It was like they didn't own multiple. Some people just owned one. It was like a house slave that cared for their things for free. Anyway, when you are going around the monopoly board collecting other people's money, yeah, of course you're going to be successful. Now, the black community has just been permitted, like just now, like in 1965, they were just permitted to start going around the monopoly board themselves. And they're not collecting other people's money. They never were. That's why there are only, I think, 2 black billionaires in the United States. Maybe there are 4 now. Oprah, Beyonce, Jay-Z, and I think not Michael Jordan, but some basketball player. Oprah Winfrey. I mean, there are black billionaires in other countries, but we're talking about America's history. Oprah was the only black billionaire until 2003. Bob Johnson became a black billionaire in 2003, and then he was the richest black billionaire. No, I'm sorry. Oprah was the only black billionaire from 2004 to 2006. This isn't very helpful, this chart I'm looking at here. Hold on. Now I'm worried that my microphone is going to go out on me again. There are 2,640 billionaires in the world, and I think like 500 of them in the United States. 756 billionaires in the United States. I'm seeing like South African billionaires and stuff, but I'm not seeing. Okay, yeah, here we go. We got Jay-Z. Well, how many do we have? I think we're up to 16 now. 16. LeBron James worth 1.2 billion. He's number 16. Tiger Woods 1.3 billion. Tyler Perry 1.4 billion. Rihanna 1.4 billion. Wow, is that real? Rihanna 1.4 billion? That is nuts. Michael Lee Chin 1.4 billion. Alex Karp 1.9. Strive Masiyiwa 1.9. Masiyiwa overcame protracted government opposition to launch mobile phone network Econet Wireless Zimbabwe in his country of birth in 98, according to Forbes. He and his wife... Okay, that doesn't really count because he's not even from the U.S. Is this just all black billionaires, or there are only 16 of them? Patrice Motsepe. Motsepe was the first black African to appear on the Forbes list, who became a billionaire in 2008 as founder and chairman of African Rainbow Minerals. And then, of course, Oprah is number 7, 2.8 billion. Michael Jordan, 3.2 billion. So the point is, we can count them almost on two hands, seemingly worldwide, let alone in America. I think there are only four in America: LeBron James, Oprah, Michael Jordan, Jay-Z, Beyonce. 5, I believe, in America. Although Jay-Z and Beyonce are married, aren't they? So does that really count as two separate ones? Anyway, Kanye used to be on that list. Not anymore. Anyway, the point that I'm so laboriously trying to reach here is that black people in America were just now allowed to start going around the Monopoly board. And all the properties and everything was already bought up by the time that they got to start going around. And skyscrapers built on every property. So naturally, the black community is going to be, they're going to have less opportunities than the white people who came before them had, right? The black community has been pushed into ghettos since 1865 and only just recently allowed to live anywhere. So, obviously, there aren't going to be as many rich black Americans or as many even middle-class black Americans. Of course there won't. Now, equality of outcome and equality of opportunity are the terms that Phil used here. Equity and equality is what he's talking about. What's the difference? Right now, black people have equality of opportunity by and large. Any black person can go to college for chemistry and, get a master's or a PhD and teach at a college. Any of them can do that, and it's not a problem. But the fact that they don't have the opportunity in the first place means that there's inequality of opportunity in practice, even if they're allowed to. And that's where equity comes in. We want to make it possible for the black community. We want to make things more fair. So say only 6% of the STEM field is made up of black Americans, even though there are 15% black Americans in the United States. So to achieve equality of outcome, we would aim to put roughly 15% closer to representative of what's in society. 15% or so black Americans in STEM fields. So say Procter & Gamble want to hire 15% black Americans to work at their factories. And it doesn't mean discriminating against anybody over anything. It means when all else is equal, when this person has the exact same resume as anybody else, they're equally as qualified, fresh out of the university, same GPA, try to equalize it by adding another black person to the mix to try to bring them into, or to try to bring it up to 15% representative of society. That is equality of outcome to some degree. It's not discrimination against white people. It's trying to make things more fair. Anyway, of course, it's going to complain about this. We want equity, not equality, because people are starting way down here. There's a graphic that depicts this. Sorry, I'm going off on a tangent here, but I feel this is an important subject to talk about. This is equality versus equity. Equality is everybody has the same box to stand over the fence and look at people playing. Equity is where there are 762 billionaires in the United States and only 4 or 5 or 6 of them are black. So we try to assist the black community in rising up out of poverty, which was imposed upon them by the white community back then. Now, we don't have to feel any guilt over that. I don't feel any guilt over the fact that, black people were slaves. No reason to feel guilty. I wasn't there. I didn't do it. But I will feel guilty, and you should, if you don't try to rectify the problems in society that led to that. Not because I'm white or whatever other thing, but because it's the right thing to do. And if you don't do the right thing, then you are to blame for the conditions that exist in society. Yeah, I think 90% of all game night groups have Monopoly banned. And if they don't, they should, yeah. People get downright toxic when playing Monopoly, I've noticed. Boy, it gets ugly. Cade the Squirrel, thank you so much for the super chat, Jeep. Yeah, I saw that earlier. I'm sorry I didn't mention it before. And Lee Franks, thanks for being a member. Welcome. Anyway, yeah, that's equality versus equity. Equality of outcome versus equality of opportunity. We should have equity. We should make it so that the percentage of people in the STEM fields, the percentage of people working for Microsoft, percentage of people working for Procter & Gamble and whoever else, we should make it so that it's representative of society. Everybody should have the same opportunities. And the black community doesn't have the same opportunities right now, even without a racist person in the system. Not a single racist person to be found anywhere. Let's just assume that. The outcomes, the result of the system that we live under is racist as a result of, hundreds of years of oppression and all that. They just now are allowed to go around the monopoly board as a result of that. So not a racist bone in anyone's body. Let's just make that assumption. Dr. Phil, you're not racist, okay? I'm not racist. Peterson isn't racist. No one's racist. We all love the black community and Mexicans and everybody else. We love them all. But there's still inequality in the system as a result of people not being allowed to go around the monopoly board until just now. So we're not calling you bad. Not saying that you need to nothing. We're not saying that. Don't need to give your money to a black person. No. Anyway, these people are so sensitive and ridiculous. So when he talks about equality of outcome versus equality of opportunity, that's what he's coming about. That's what he's talking about. I want equity. I want equity. I want things to be more fair. You're not discriminating against white people by getting black people to be more representative of their population size in society. You are discriminating against them less.
Society, like this equality of outcome concept, to me, I can't.
By the way, we talked about this in psychology classes too, in like the early psychology. I think, year two, I think we talked about this. Year two, I think we talked about this concept here: equity versus equality. Phil claims to have a PhD in the field. Does he really? Is that real? Like, I don't know. I can't figure out how he could possibly believe the things that he believes incorrectly while also having gone through the material and looked at the scientific studies and at least expressed to the people around him in school that he understood these concepts.
To me, I can't think of anything more destructive to a society than teaching everybody that we're going to work towards an equality of outcome. That's been tried. We've got 100.
Where? It's been tried? Who tried that exactly? When? And what were the circumstances? Were the circumstances similar to America, where black people were enslaved for like hundreds of years, however long it was, and then were just now allowed to go around the monopoly board? Again, the slavery was abolished in 1865, but they couldn't go around the monopoly board until 1965. And even then, it takes, time to build momentum. Took me 30 years to build momentum to get to where I am now. So at best, we could expect somebody to kind of probably start rising up and getting a little bit of wealth, maybe reaching middle class in 1995.
Quality of outcome.
I mean, we are within a generation or two generations at most. Like, people's parents drank from black only and white only water fountains. My parents went to segregated schools, although, they may have been desegregated where my parents went to school. I'm not sure. My dad might have gone to a segregated school. I don't know. He lived in West Virginia. There aren't very many black people in West Virginia, almost none. My mom went to school in Connecticut, I believe, and I think segregation was abolished in Connecticut, so I'm not sure. But they were in school during segregation. So what do you make of that? It was literally this generation or the last one.
I can't think of anything more destructive to a society than teaching everybody that we're going to work towards an equality of outcome. That's been tried.
By who?
We've got 100,000 corpses to prove that doesn't work.
I'm sorry? What? What's he talking about? I don't understand. I am so lost. 100,000 corpses to prove that doesn't work. Whose corpses? What are you going on about right now, Phil? Seriously, he knows these concepts. I know he does, and Peterson does too, because I learned these in school. In year 2, they certainly learned them as well, right? I can't imagine a world in which they didn't learn them in school. Although they did take their classes in the 70s, I suppose. So that's possible. Maybe they didn't.
And so I think that...
I still don't know what he means by 100,000 corpses.
We've been just the same in America and in Canada. It's been built on a meritocracy where hard work was rewarded, talent was rewarded.
For white people, yes, up until 1965. Absolutely. And you know what? After 1965, assuming everybody was suddenly not racist from that moment on, which is not a safe assumption, but just being super extra generous, let's just assume no one was racist beyond 1965. Oh, segregation is abolished and banned. Oh, no one's racist anymore. We can just move on with our lives. Now, everybody can live in the society and everything else together. That's not the case. But even assuming it is, it takes time to go around the monopoly board. And it would take at least until 1995 for anybody to, be even capable of achieving anything. Because that's how long it takes for somebody to build a life. I mean, again, it took me 30 years to get, into an established position on YouTube, for example. And that was sheer luck for me. It's hard enough for a white person to break through the ceiling. It's hard enough for a white person to reach middle class. Even harder for people who are actually discriminated against. Not you, Phil. Not you, Jordan. I'm not saying you're racist. That's not what it's about. But there are racist people out there. In reality, I don't think that these people are racist, either of these two guys. I don't think that they have a problem with black people. But you know what I do think? I think that they're putting a concerted effort into maintaining a system that is racist. They're trying their best to maintain a system that is implicitly racist. Whether anyone in this specific system is racist, they're trying to maintain the system as it is now by complaining about equality of outcome like this. So could you call them racist? I guess in a technical sense you could, yeah. But I don't feel that labeling people with names like that really gets us anywhere. So let's just say they're not, for the sake of argument, and complain about the fact that there really are real racist people out there who fucking hate the black community and are looking for an opportunity to screw them over. And there have been since 1965, certainly. I mean, the number has decreased since 1965, I suppose, but it's still not zero by any stretch of the imagination.
Added value was rewarded, and now all of a sudden we're violating some of the most fundamental principles of the psychology, just simply don't reward bad behavior.
Who's rewarding bad behavior? What are you even talking about right now? What does he mean, don't reward bad behavior? What?
Support things you don't want to see more of. I mean, this is Psych 101.
Yeah, that would be Psych 101. Sure. Pavlovian conditioning, operant versus classical. God, it's been so long since I've been in these classes. Anyway, the point is, yes, yeah, absolutely. What the fuck are you talking about right now? I'm sorry. My mistake, guys. I'm sorry. What the are you talking about?
But it seems like people skip that course. It seems like those that are trying to run some of these agendas don't understand that you have to have an insight into how people are motivated, what gets them passionate, what gets them moving forward.
I truly have no clue what he is talking about right now. I am completely lost. What are you going on about right now, Phil?
And when I see these things happening, I say, well, somebody's got to step up and call this out for what it is, which is lunacy. And
wait, were we talking about equity versus equality just now? Where are we now? It's just like, I feel like he has suddenly entered talking point coma phase, right? Is he in talking point coma phase now? Where all he can think about is all of the ridiculous nonsense that he spreads or that he hears from far-right media? He's in a talking point coma right now, and he cannot find his way out. He's lost. He's lost forever. Family holding his hand next to his bed, crying next to him saying, Phil, please come out of it. We want you back. We want you back, bud. But he just keeps saying the exact same nonsensical garbage he hears over and over again.
But, people are 3 times as unwilling to speak up now as they were in 1950. I mean, the number...
Speak up about what?
Number of people unwilling to take the risk has tripled since 1950.
Take the risk of what? What are you talking about?
Okay, so let me walk through these things again. I'll lay out a bit of my understanding, and then if you could push back and elaborate on that, that would be helpful. So it seems to me with regard to family, so human beings are unique biologically because of the unbelievably extended dependency period of our children. And so we...
Okay, now hang on. He's talking about, yes, this is real psychology. This is fascinating what he's saying. So cats, by the way, Nericol says, suggestion from chatters, add the Kevin Sorbo disappointed soundbite. That's good. You know what? I'm gonna write that down. Why is it that cats can have like a litter of like, I don't know how many. Do they have 5 kittens? I'm not sure. Say cats can have like 5 kittens, right? And those kittens are up and ready to go within 3 weeks to take care of themselves, right? But human beings take 18 years, 19, 20, 21, 22 years, 30 years sometimes to get to a point where they're capable of taking care of themselves. And really, like, we evolved for human beings to be capable of taking care of themselves mostly around 14 years old. It's just like we live in a very complex society today. So that rearing, it's called child rearing age. That's the concept in psychology, I think. The rearing time is extended as a result of how complex society is. This is a psychological concept that he's about to address here, yes. But he's going to mix in his new age garbage, as he always does. He's dead on with his psychology and completely off with all of his ridiculous nonsense, like all the other new age bullshit that he spreads. Okay, tell me about the child rearing age. It's because we have to grow such a complex brain. That's the reason. A big brain that learns so much information and is capable of processing it and everything. That's why our rearing age is so long.
Logically, because of the unbelievably extended dependency period of our children. And so we have a particular reproductive strategy. Other creatures have that reproductive strategy to some degree, but we are the ultimate exemplars of low reproductive rate, high investment strategies.
That's correct, yes. He is talking about psychological concepts right now. Absolutely. Go on.
And it seems to me that the corollary of that is that...
Why use words like that? Why don't you just use English? I've heard the word corollary. I've used the word corollary. I have no clue what it means. I don't even remember. It's been so long because it's an uncommon word. Define corollary. Is it like the opposite? I forget. Proposition that follows from and is often appended to one already. Okay. So he could have said instead, the natural conclusion from that. That would have made a lot more sense. Why did he say that? Why not just use language that everyone understands? Jesus Christ, dude.
And it seems to me that the corollary of that is that...
The natural conclusion from the fact that our child rearing age is so much longer than other species' child rearing time. Go on.
Investment strategies. And it seems to me that the corollary of that is that raising children is sufficiently challenging and difficult and also important that one person can't do it well on average. And
no, I think one person can do it well. Absolutely. It's just one person having to take care of themselves and their house and work a job that they get paid practically nothing for while also taking care of a kid. That's when things get a lot harder. That was me. I had to do that. I raised my kid alone for years until I found my new wife when my kid was like 8 or 9, I think maybe. I don't remember how old the kid was. It was me. It was me and her alone in the world. I had to drop her off at daycare and go to my job. So, okay, sure, yeah. It's difficult to survive in society while also taking care of a kid. But no, I don't believe that it's impossible to... It's not impossible to do by any stretch of the imagination. And it's not even difficult for somebody to raise a kid on their own if their bills are taken care of.
So the rule seems to be both morally and perhaps arguably biologically that the nuclear family is the necessary minimum of social arrangement that allows...
Okay, nuclear family, another concept that we discussed in psychology classes. Nuclear families are specifically families who have a mom and a dad, and both the mom and dad are the birth parents. You have mixed families, I think, is another concept in psychology, which is a step-parent is involved instead of one of the other parents. Like, these are just definitions that psychologists use so that they're all on the same page and they understand what's being discussed, to my knowledge. That's what I learned anyway. There's no reason to believe that a nuclear family is necessary. What are you talking about? See, he's going off the reservation now. Oh, sorry. I've heard I shouldn't be saying that. So he's going off the rails now. He's talking about something outside of his expertise. He's now entering into La La Land where it doesn't make any sense.
Allows for propagation. It's something like that. And so if we fragment the family below the level of the nuclear, then things fall apart. Now,
if we fragment something smaller than the nuclear, so is he saying like if... Well, really, I'll tell you what he's saying. This is a thinly veiled dog whistle. A lot of conservatives, right-wing extremists, and the like to blame black people for their problems, rather than recognizing that it's a direct result of the fact that until 1965, they weren't allowed to go around the monopoly board. And after 1965, it took time to go around the monopoly board. Oh yeah, and they're not collecting 200 every time they pass go because they didn't have the benefit of stealing somebody else's fucking money by owning a slave, by owning a human being. So anyway, shit, I'm trying to remember where I was going with this.
Fragment the family below the level of the nuclear.
Right. So a lot of racist people like to claim that it's the black community's fault rather than the system's fault. Not saying it's white people's fault who are in control, not saying that it's the Koch brothers' fault, not saying it's Jordan's fault. Okay, I'm not calling you racist. Calm down. I'm just saying the system is racist. No individual actor in the system has to be racist for racist outcomes to exist. Another thing I learned in psychology classes, literally my first year. Where were you in year one? Were you paying any fucking attention in class at all? Racist white people, like genuinely racist white people, like to blame the black community for the problems that it faces by claiming that black fathers are not around. They leave their kid. And saying like that, this is the justification right here. He's giving the justification to racists to hate black people and blame their problems on them instead of accepting the fact that they could just now go around the monopoly board, like this generation. He's giving them the justification. So again, maybe Jordan Peterson isn't racist. Okay, I'll give you that. For the sake of argument, let's just say, okay, he's not racist. You're not racist, Jordan, but you are contributing and assisting people who are. You're giving them their justification to be racist with this kind of garbage.
Propagation. It's something like that. And so if we fragment the family below the level of the nuclear, then...
So he's saying so when black fathers aren't around for their children, then it ends badly, i.e. black people are to blame for all of their problems. Individual responsibility and all that.
And things fall apart. Now, maybe the nuclear family is also too fragmented, but we could start with it as a minimal basis. And so...
Wait, is he saying that we should have polygamy? Okay, interesting. I'm listening.
Any attempt to, for example, put forward the claim that all familial structures are of equal value is...
Okay, who said that? Who told you that all familial structures are of equal value? Where did you hear that? You didn't hear it in psychology classes. You didn't hear it from left-leaning people. By the way, where are the black fathers exactly? They're being jailed disproportionately by the police. They are being mistreated by the police and targeted specifically. Do you know that New York City, it used to have this concept called stop and frisk, okay? So police in other cities have the ability to pull people over when something's wrong or when they see something that's not quite right or something is off. They can pull people over. They can, if they smell weed or something, they can search their car. But we have the subway here. So what are the police doing exactly? Like, how do the police get people? How do they stop drug trafficking and things? They instituted a policy, I believe, under Mayor Bloomberg called stop and frisk. Stop and frisk is where police in New York City are legally allowed to just stop anybody anytime they want and search them for no reason at all. Just search them. Stop them and search them. Stop and frisk. Now, that's a complete violation of their Fourth Amendment rights against unreasonable search and seizure. But did Bloomberg give a shit about that? Of course he didn't. That was reversed by the following mayor, I think. I don't remember who reversed that. But it's an issue that the Supreme Court could not rule on because it's now moot, because it's been reversed by the mayor. The mayor, honestly, the one that came after Bloomberg, he should have kept it in place while the Supreme Court deliberated over it, because it's very obviously a violation of people's civil rights. But, here we are, so whatever. Anyway, stop and frisk was removed under Bloomberg. I'm sorry, stop and frisk was started under Bloomberg, removed under the next guy, whoever that was. It wasn't de Blasio. I don't remember who the next one was. And now we've got Mayor Eric Adams. And he instituted stop and frisk again. You want to know how many white people were stopped and frisked? What percentage of white people were stopped? Take a wild guess. Just throw a number out there for me. 3%. 3% of the people who were stopped and frisked in New York City were white. 97% were non-white. That's insane. That is a system that is very obviously racist, right? I don't know how else to interpret this. So the point that I'm getting to, once again, so laboriously, I apologize, is that people in the black community are disproportionately being arrested. 1/4 of those stop and frisk searches were unconstitutional, 25%. They just stop them for no fucking reason and search them. So where are the black fathers exactly, Jordan? Where do you think those black fathers are that they've left their kid behind? They're being stopped and searched, and in many cases being beaten or being mistreated in some way. And Jordan just wants to give racists an excuse to continue being racist.
Counterproductive if it's the case that raising children is so complex that a minimum of 2 people have to engage in it. So that's on the family side. On the free speech side, I don't think there's any difference between free speech and thought fundamentally. Thought can be awkward because critical thought requires that people dispense with their foolish ideas, and that can...
Okay, there is a difference between free speech and free thought, and here's the difference. When you speak, you are spreading your thoughts to other people through a concept called a meme. It's a thought virus. That's actually what a meme is. You are spreading thoughts like a virus. Richard Dawkins coined that term. I don't know if you guys were aware of that, fascinatingly. And you can spread dangerous and damaging thoughts to other people this way. Like, for example, the thought that you think that, a politician should be murdered, or the thought that Donald Trump or Joe Biden should be hogtied in the back of a truck. There's one. That's one that just happened recently. Somebody spread that thought, and now it's disproportionately more likely that somebody is going to attempt that. Anyway, speech and thought are different because speech turns to action. Speech is an action. Speech is a behavior. Thought is not. They are different. And he knows this. He has to know this. You can't convince me he doesn't. He's completely full of shit here.
Be painful. And
step back a little bit. Listen again.
Thought, fundamentally. Thought can be awkward because critical thought requires that people dispense with their foolish ideas, and that can be painful. And people who push the no offense agenda would like to believe that we can think.
What no offense agenda? What are you talking about?
We can think critically without any emotional consequences. And I don't think that's true, because it's actually painful to have your ideas exposed as foolish and then to dispense with them.
Sure, yes, that's painful. And people should be able to criticize people's thoughts and beliefs and ideas and values and all that junk. We should be able to criticize that stuff without a doubt. What you shouldn't be able to do, however, is discriminate against somebody in, say, the workplace. What you shouldn't do, but you should be allowed to, you just shouldn't, is be a racist piece of garbage in front of millions of people on social media. Just throwing out a couple of examples here. Nobody's saying you shouldn't be allowed to do certain things. You shouldn't be allowed to yell fire in a crowded theater. You shouldn't be allowed to inspire violence against somebody the way that Donald Trump does. You shouldn't legally be allowed to act like Libs of TikTok does by targeting people with bomb threats, not personally, but through stochastic terrorism, by pointing a mob in a direction and letting what happens happen. That is stochastic terrorism. You shouldn't be able to do that, but you can legally. Anyway, that's the bottom line here. Jordan Peterson knows there are things you should not be allowed to say. Like, I want to kill the president, for example. I don't. I'm just saying that's one of the things that you're not legally allowed to say. You can't get up there and say, blah, what I just said. You shouldn't be allowed to say certain things legally. You can think it, go nuts. Think it to your heart's content. But the moment thought turns to action is when it crosses into a new world. It crosses into something different than it was before. He knows that. Once again, Psychology 101. Which year was this? Year 1 or 2 of psychology classes? I'm not sure.
To have your ideas exposed as foolish and then to dispense with them. And so we seem to have entered a situation where compassion for short-term consequences means that we're willing.
Short-term, for short-term consequences. Interesting. Never heard of short-term before. The term of one shirt?
To allow foolish things to propagate, even though that will cause long-term catastrophe.
Oh, dude, I love it. Did you catch what he just said? He's complaining about people not being allowed to say what they want, and literally, seemingly in the same sentence, maybe in the very next sentence, same paragraph or same thought certainly, he said, and we're allowing bad ideas to spread.
Compassion for short-term consequences means that we're willing to allow foolish things to propagate, even though that will cause long-term catastrophe.
Okay, we're allowing foolish things to propagate. Yeah, well, the thing is, there's a line where it becomes public sentiment. Like, for example, look at World War II. Nazis were nobodies. It was a small nobody party that nobody liked or paid any attention to until they took power and they started spreading their ideas. And you know, like all of Germany adopted those ideas, or many, not all of Germany, but many. The thought that, you know, I want to kill Jews, for example, that thought didn't exist in people's heads until Hitler spread it to their heads. Like a meme. That's what a meme is. And it spread from person to person until all of Germany, or many of Germans, like a lot of Germans, felt that way. They thought that, you know, Jews were controlling the world and they were whatever. So anyway, sometimes things happen that aren't, or sometimes ideas spread that shouldn't. Now, I'm not saying it should have been illegal necessarily for Hitler to say, you know, I hate Jews and I hate this and that and whatever. I'm not saying that should be illegal necessarily. I'm just saying within the bounds of the paradox of tolerance, maybe Hitler should have, you know, been limited in some way. I don't know how exactly. Maybe the press should have refused to report on him, for example. But sometimes thoughts and behaviors and actions need to be curbed or criticized in some way for the protection of society, so we don't get another kill the Jews situation. I'm going to halt it here, but let me know what you think about this in the comments. This is just wild.